All right, so today we're going to take a look at Cockpit, which is a free tool that allows you to manage your Linux machines through a consistent web interface. And rather than go through all the documentation here and show you their website, I thought I would just jump right in and show you what this thing looks like when it's running. Now, imagine you have a bunch of Linux machines, or maybe you only have one Linux machine, and this could be across many different distributions. I will actually jump back to this, which is supported by Cockpit. You can see a bunch of them here. Now, imagine you want to access and administer it remotely. Now, this is not going to work well if you have, say, hundreds or thousands of machines, but in a home lab situation where maybe you have a couple, 5, 10 machines, and you want to check on how they're doing, apply updates, even browse the file system, or be able to manage the virtual machines sitting on those machines, Cockpit may be a tool you want to look at. So let me just kind of walk you through an example in front of us. Now what I have set up for demonstration purposes is I have a virtual machine sitting off on the side, which we'll look at in a second, and it is running Cockpit. And what you can do is basically now you can access that machine right through your web browser. So I have logged into it. And so I can see an overall kind of health of the machine. I can look in the login history, basically see some history on basic usage information, CPU, memory, disks, and you can see who was using what very quickly. You can dive into the settings. You can look at hardware details on the machine. You can even dig into logs. You can go browse the storage on the machine, dig into networking. And as I said before, you can also even manage the virtual machines running on the machine. And if we had a VM running, you could actually then interact with the console on that virtual machine, which is super nice. And of course, obviously I think all this is straightforward. You can go through and you can actually navigate the file system on the machine, download and upload files, which is cool. You can apply software updates. And of course, you can even just grab a terminal right onto your machine. So who would want this? Like I said, this is not going to be something that you want to use if you have a tremendous number of machines to run. But in a home lab environment, if you're running a bunch of Linux machines and potentially a bunch of Linux distributions, this will give you like a consistent interface to interact with those machines, like across all of those environments, right? Different Linux distributions, virtual, bare metal, etc. And there's just one way to look at it. Now, the other, I think, use case that this handles very well is if you're just not familiar with all the command line tools to do this, or you just don't want to. You don't want to log into the machines and figure this out. Or you just, as you're trying new distributions, maybe you're just not familiar with the difference in tooling between, say, Ubuntu or Red Hat. Now, I'll tell you what led me to Cockpit was actually a use case completely different, which was managing virtual machines. Now, I have multiple Proxmox hosts running, as you can see here. Here's one of them with some VMs. I have another big one. This is a much bigger machine with other VMs. I am not running them in a cluster anymore just because that wasn't worth the overhead. And what I found is now I have another machine. I have a machine not running Proxmox, which is my desktop PC, which I use for gaming and everything else. But it's a pretty beefy machine, and sometimes I like to run virtual machines on it. And the one thing I do love about Proxmox is being able to go to the console on any of these machines. I think it's fantastic because if I'm sitting out on the couch with my laptop, I can check on what's happening on these VMs. And I was like, wow, I would really like a tool to be able to do this for virtual machines running on my desktop PC. And I ended up landing on Cockpit as a tool that can provide that. But in learning about Cockpit, I was like, wow, it actually has a whole bunch of other features that I thought were worth learning about and then sharing and making this video about. So that is the quick overview of what Cockpit can do. So why don't we dive in and we will show you how to install it, and I'll be showing you how to install it on Ubuntu. But look, it's super straightforward. So we'll just use that as the example case. All right, so in front of us, we have a virtual machine that we're going to use to show you how to install Cockpit. And what we'll do is we'll just open up a console and we'll start with the basic update commands. And once your system is updated, you can just install it using apt. It's that simple. Now, when you do this for yourself, you're probably going to want to install a bunch of other packages, but I'm just going to install the base Cockpit to show you something. All right, Cockpit should be installed and running. And once it's running, you can just access it on the IP address of the host on port 9090 is the default setup. So let's just bring our web browser back, and I will reload this because it's the same host. Now, when you log in, you're just going to use the credentials of your user. So you don't need to set up any additional accounts. And there you go. Similar interface to what I showed you at the beginning of this video when I just jumped right into the demo, but you'll notice something is missing. There's a whole bunch of other tabs on the left side here that I showed you that aren't here. So I think I showed you the virtual machine tab, the file navigator, and possibly some others. And so the way to get those is to install additional packages. And let me show you how that works, because Cockpit actually has a whole bunch of additional packages, both some officially provided and some provided by the community. And what you'll want to do is figure out which ones you want to install. So if you come over to the website, you can go down and you'll see a large list of optional and third party. And here you go. Here are the additional applications you can install with Cockpit. You can install storage. I think that's on ours. Network is there. There's software updates for different package managers. Now here's the one that I was talking about. Like, the package is called Cockpit Machines. You can do Podman containers, kernel dump. You can see there's a whole bunch here. Now, Cockpit files. I found this didn't work. This package doesn't exist as of the making of this, and you need to install it probably from source in GitHub. But I think there's a better option, and that is called Cockpit Navigator. And we'll get to that. But these are all the official ones. If you scroll down more, you can see the third-party packages. So if you have ZFS running, you can grab a package for ZFS. Here you go. Navigator, just so you know, Navigator is the one I found for file browsing that works really well. So we'll come back to that. You can do storage benchmarks, etc. So you can go through, figure out what packages you want to install, and just add those right to your installation. So just to show you, I'm going to jump back to this, and I will install the virtual machine package. All right, now let's restart it. Now let's go back to our browser and see if we have the tab we expect. Go here, we'll reconnect. And look at that. We now have a tab for virtual machines. And I could go in and I could create a new VM. You can upload the ISO. It's really great. And like I said, when you have a VM running, you can use this web interface to interact with the console of the VM, which is just fantastic. Now let's look at a third-party plugin. And I had mentioned I found Navigator to be a good one, and I showed it before. So a full-featured file browser for Cockpit. Let's go over to GitHub and take a look at it. Here you go. And what you can do is we'll just go to the releases. Sorry, not the releases. You can just read the installation. So here's what you do on Ubuntu. So let's give it a try. All right, so we grab that package, and then we will just use apt to install it. So it looks like it worked. I did get a warning, but I did not have a problem with this before. So we installed the file navigator. Let's just restart and go back to our browser again. All right, and there it is. Now we have the navigator tab. I could go in, navigate the file system, upload and download files to just show you. Here is the package that we just downloaded onto this virtual machine. I can click it and I can download it, and there you go. Pretty darn cool. Now, one thing you may be asking yourself is like, okay, this is great, but what if I have a whole bunch of machines? What do I need to do? Now, the simple answer to your question is you basically probably need to have to bookmark the URL for each of those machines, or you can do something like if you're running dashboard software like I am here, you can make a tab for each of your machines that you want to go log in. Another option is that you can use this interface, and basically you can put a drop-down menu right here that will allow you to switch among those different machines. Now, this used to be a feature that worked right out of the box. The best I can tell that they disabled it for security reasons, but there is a way to re-enable it through a configuration file. And what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of your machines, or I guess you could really do it on all of them. It just seems like a lot of work. But you'll pick one of your machines that you want to be the administrator machine, and we'll see all of the machines basically have Cockpit dashboards for all of your machines. So you'll go to that machine, and you're going to make some changes to configuration files. And let me show you in the Cockpit documentation how you do this. So I came to the Cockpit website, clicked on documentation, and I went into the deployment guide. And what you want to do is you're going to want to edit the Cockpit configuration file. Now, I don't even think there is a Cockpit configuration file out of the box. So you'll want to make one. It's easy. It's a .ini format. So let me just show you the setting that you will need. And by the way, of course, look through these additional settings if there's something else that you are interested in setting up. Here we go. This is the key point. Allow multi-host. When set to true, Cockpit will allow users to connect to multiple hosts in one session. The default is OS specific. And this is why they shut it off. So make sure that you are aware of this. When connecting to multiple servers, JavaScript runs without isolation. All systems will be vulnerable to potential attacks from other hosts. Enable this option only when all hosts are trusted. So you can see why they turn this off by default. Now, for my simple homelab environment, and definitely for this demo, I'm not too worried about it. But so what we're going to do is I will go back to the machine, and you can see in etc cockpit, there is nothing. So I will edit the file. And let's just check the section header web service. Okay. Let's just confirm that's right. Allow multi-host, true. That should do it. Let's save that, restart it, and check the browser. Now here it is, something changed. This drop down. That wasn't there before. And what we can do now is we can add other hosts to communicate with. Now I prepared for this a little bit by setting up some other test VMs. So I'll show you over on my Proxmox server. I have 2 test VMs for Cockpit. So let me I have Cockpit already installed on these. And we can actually go to these addresses and view Cockpit locally. But what I want to show you is how we bring that all together into one interface. So this is, let's see, 3.247. So what we need to do, I'm going to do add new host. And again, I'm just using the username of my account on that host. I'm going to say trust. All right, and we logged in, and now you can see I have 2 hosts here. And here is this host on Proxmox, and this is running Ubuntu server, an older one, 22 or 24. We'll probably be able to tell when we look at the information, but let's just turn on admin mode. Oh, there we go, we got the host name. So here you can see, here we go. And you can see it's Ubuntu 24.04.2 LTS. So definitely different than my other host, which was running Kubuntu. And you can see when I install Cockpit on here, I installed a bunch of the additional packages. I did not install the file browser, but virtual machines, which won't even work because I don't have that set up on the VM. But just to beat this example to death, because I did install 2 virtual machines, I will just show you this. All right, so this address is 3.173. And here we go. So now we can see the 3 hosts we have set up and can manage through Cockpit. All right, well, we are gonna wrap it up here. And so I hope that was a helpful quick tour of a nice little web interface you can use to manage your Linux-based machines in your home lab. If you have any questions, drop them down below and we'll see you next time.